And guys, what I want to do before we get started, let's start with some good news. I want to start with some success stories. Who has some successes to share from this past week? Anything that's going on in the real estate business? Maybe you got some appointments. Maybe you put a contract together. I want to hear some success stories of what's going on in your real estate lives. Anybody?
I have one.
I love to hear it.
Hi. So I got the news today. I'm already licensed in New Jersey, but I got the news today that I passed my New York state exam as well. So I'm super excited about that.
Good
So
for
that's
you.
my highlight so far. Thank you.
Let me ask you a question. As a New Jersey real estate instructor, I don't teach the pre-licensing in New York. How different did you find that exam? Was it basically the same core stuff, or was it really different?
It was basically the same national stuff. I just had to try to focus on the New York specific things, but it was easy. Nothing like the New Jersey exam. But it was pretty straightforward.
Test is a little tougher.
Yeah,
huh?
New Jersey was tough for me, but yeah. But it was
Well,
easy.
good for you. I teach a pre-licensing
Thank you.
study class on Wednesday nights. So I'll be doing that this week. We'll be getting all those folks passing the New Jersey test. So who else? Give me some other success stories for the week. I want to hear what's going on in your lives in the real estate world. Who's had a success this week? No, let's see. Let me ask you, maybe I'll ask it this way. Who made an attempt this week? Did we make any prospecting calls this week? Did we get out there and see any properties to preview this weekend? Anything in that regard? I'd love to hear what's going on at least. What are you doing?
I previewed 2 properties.
Previewed 2 properties. Awesome. Where were you, Leslie?
I was in Woodcliff Lake.
Okay, good deal. Anybody else get out and see some of the open houses? How was open house traffic yesterday where you guys are? Did you notice?
It's been very busy. I put an offer in this week, but it got denied.
How many people were you up against, Joe?
There was multiple offers. I didn't know how many, but we were 25 over asking and got denied.
You know, it's frustrating. You know, one of the things, guys, I'm going to tell you, this is a wicked tough market to be in right now. If you're working with buyers, it is just so hard to figure out how high do they need to go to get these houses. You know, there's so little inventory. There's so much competition. One of the things I'm just going to caution you about is don't be in the position of counseling people in terms of what they should offer. That is a kind of a dangerous spot right now because these markets, especially when you've got 4, 5, and 6 people offering on them, they're so driven by emotion and no longer by logic, right? That it's really hard to figure out how high do you have to go. And I do know a couple of lawsuits that are pending right now where agents are being sued by their buyers because the agent told them, you know what, if you go $20,000 over the asking price, that should be enough. And it turned out it wasn't enough. And they ended up losing their house. So never be in the position to tell people. And I don't believe that you did, Joe. But here's the thing that you would do. What you would do is you'd guide them through kind of a discussion about anticipatory regret. You know what? You've seen how hard it is to find a home right now. You've seen how many we had to look at. Some of us have been down this route before with multiple bids. What happens if this one gets away, right? How high would you be willing to go? Because here's the thing, buyers are always afraid of overpaying, right? They're always afraid of overpaying. And yet, if you have to turn around and sell that house again in 30 days or 60 days or even a year, I think that's a fair concern. Is there going to be a guarantee that you could make your money back, especially after fees? No, there isn't. But most of us don't buy our property homes that way. If you're going to flip, it's a different story. But most of us, the homes that we live in, we're holding them for a period of time. And that takes a lot of the risk out of it, right? So I hope, Joe, you find one and you put another offer in and you just have that conversation. Look, how high would you be willing to go? So if you lost it for $100 more, then it wasn't worth it to you, because that's how high you're going to have to go, right?
No, I agree. I just it's hard because you want to keep the buyers motivated and encouraged still at the same time.
Yeah, you know what I think is a good idea, Joe, is when you lose one, and guys, even our very best buyers agents on some of our strongest teams, the legendary buyers agents who are just rock stars, what they're telling me is they're losing out on maybe 60% of the offers, 70% of the offers they're putting in. Is that hard right now? And so what I would recommend to keep the motivation up and to keep the relationship intact, you know what? It's just like when you're a coach, right? You're coaching a little league team and a kid strikes out. What do? You just prop them up and say, hey, we're going to get the next one. And I would say, if you don't get it, I would do something to acknowledge it. You know, I don't know, maybe you send them a gift card to go out to dinner somewhere and say, hey, just, you know what, here's $50, go grab lunch at the cafe, and we're going to get the next one. Anything you can do to keep them engaged and keep them feeling good, because it's so easy to get frustrated and feeling bad about this process. You don't have to spend a lot, but you do have to do something to kind of lift people up again, right? Anyway, that said, we've got now 28 people in the room. Any other people have some good news or some success stories from last week before we get into our PowerPoint tonight? Anybody else? I see a hand, Lisa Moffett. Why don't you unmute yourself and talk to us?
Hi, how are you? Just to go on what we just discussed. And I'm really new at this. We've got a lot of stuff going on. I'm in the college process with my son. But anyway,
Ooh, that's
I was
fun
looking
time.
so I was looking for a home myself, and I got a notice. The home you're interested in just had a price change. So I was like, oh, yay. I looked at it. It went up like $15,000.
It had a price change up?
A price change. I have never received
That's
a
not
notification
usually
for-
what you see.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God. I mean, I know that's what's happening, but it was just shocking to get that for the first time.
Yeah, you know, that usually doesn't happen. We don't usually adjust upwards because people are like, what are you, crazy?
Yep.
But you know what? I think what happens sometimes in a market like this, not to say that sellers get greedy, but when they see how much traffic there is out there, they're concerned that they've underpriced and they want to adjust upward, because here's what buyers and sellers believe. They don't always understand how markets work. Sellers believe that I need to put some negotiation room in there to cushion, so that if I ask for 900,000, I know they're going to offer less. If I ask for 500, I know they're going to offer less. The
Right.
research overwhelmingly says that is not the truth. If you price it at value, no more than 5% away from what market value is, if you don't put too much of a cushion in there, what you're going to find is homes sell faster and for more money, more total dollars. Because what happens is when buyers see the value at the number that you put out there, they want to make an offer before somebody else gets it. What we know is that emotion is the greatest driver of behavior. And of all the emotions, fear of losing something is the most predictive emotion of all. So if you price it at a number that looks like such a great screaming deal that people don't want to let it get away, you will invite multiple bids. The multiple bids will invite bidding upward, and you're going to take that as high as it can go. It is so counterintuitive for a seller to trust to slightly underprice the house if you want to make more money. It's just really counterintuitive, but we know that that's the case. That's what works. So I don't usually see a price adjust upward, but yay for you. You got one. Guys, we're going to jump into today's PowerPoint. Do you see these this on the screen share your success stories? Do you see? Okay, good. If at any point the PowerPoint does not seem like it's tracking along, please let me know and I'll try to correct that. Sometimes Zoom gets a little bit wonky. Today's topic is harnessing the power of scripts. Now, quick show of hands, and we can all be honest amongst friends here. Quick show of hands, how many folks really love the idea of being scripted in the real estate business? The thought of having a script and having everything choreographed precisely as what to say, does that sound exciting? Does that sound like a turnoff? Where are we today with scripts? I just want to know where your head is at. And don't worry about the topic is harnessing the power of scripts. You know where I'm going to go. But if you're not on board 100%, I'd love to know, because I want to tell you about my conversion, but I want to hear, where are we? Are people loving the idea of being scripted? Not loving the idea of being scripted? Where are we?
I looked at a few this weekend, and I was surprised that there were a lot of them. So thank you for that. And I think it's helpful, especially for beginners who are intimidated, may not know where to start. So that was my quick thought.
Well, okay. How about the idea of being scripted as opposed to just saying spontaneously what's coming up in the conversation? Does that feel good or bad? I want to know where your head is at with that.
Scripts are really helpful because it kind of gives you an idea of what the sort of thing you can say and
Good.
get a certain pushback.
Okay, good. I'm glad. Because here's what I normally hear. When I normally hear, how do you feel about scripts? What I hear people saying is, I'm not so sure. I don't want to sound forced. I don't want to sound artificial. I don't want to sound canned. I don't want to sound like that guy who's calling me up at 7:00, interrupting my dinner, raising money for my college or the Police Benevolent Association. I don't want to sound like that guy. And it feels artificial and it feels awkward, and I don't want that. That's what I usually hear, right? And I'm going to tell you, I'm a convert. And I'll share with you a story that I share with my daytime classes as well. First of all, I'm going to just warn you that there's nobody more annoying in your life than a convert, right? The people that have stopped drinking, the people that have stopped smoking, the people that have stopped anything are the ones who preach the most about why you should change your behavior. So indulge me for a moment, right? I'm a script convert, but I wasn't always. When I first got into real estate, I kind of dubbed myself the anti-script agent. And here's why I did it. I came out of a previous career. I think I might have said in the introduction class. I was licensed as a marriage and family therapist for a while. Had a practice, a private practice, a medical family therapy practice, actually. And I spent years and years and years practicing and honing the art of being a clinician and listening and guiding people. And what I said was, I don't need to have a script. I can listen to people. God gave me 2 ears and 1 mouth. I kind of perfected that skill set. I wanted to be the unscripted agent. I put all this stuff up on my website. You would be stunned about the unscripted agent, how I can listen to you and not have a pre-programmed conversation and actually pay attention to what's going on in your life. And I got a call one day from a buddy of mine who was a therapist. And it's funny, all my therapist friends, when I made the switch into real estate, said, I can't believe you're not doing psychotherapy anymore. And I said to them, have you been in a real estate transaction? I mean, oh my God, that's like all we do is psychotherapy. We're talking the buyers off the ledge. We're talking the sellers off the ledge. But here's the thing. What my friend said is, I went on your website and he says, it made me laugh a little bit because you put all this crap up there about being the unscripted agent. And I said, yeah, the idea of being that forced in my conversations just seems so foreign and so awkward. And he said, well, I want to ask you a question. When you were in a clinical setting and you had a family with you sort of stuck and needed to figure out a way to see something different in their lives, to behave differently, did you know what you were going to say to get them to see their situation differently so that they would be freed up to do something differently? And I said, you know what? Of course I did. I went to graduate school, postgraduate training, institute training. I had all these hours of one-way glass, training with the videotaping, the whole thing. I knew exactly what I was going to say to push the buttons to cause people to see things a different way. And what he said to me is, listen, you dummy, that's a script, you idiot. Scripts are nothing more than knowing what to say to get people to see things the way they need to see them so that they can take the action that they need to take. And I thought about that for a while. And, I have to say I was a little bit humbled by that because that's the truth, right? Scripts are nothing more than knowing what to say to cause people to see things differently so they can do something different. It's about influence. And, I'm going to just share with you a little bit of science behind the scripting here. This is a guy named Albert Morabian, and you don't need to remember his name, but what you do need to remember is the research that he did at UCLA back in the late 1960s, where they started to try to figure out how do we decode communication when people are communicating to each other. How much of it is the words? How much of it is the body language? Like what? And they spent a long time studying human communication. And what they found was this. It's only 7% the words. 38% is how do I deliver those words? And that gets to things like the tone of voice and the rate of speech and the volume. 55% is the body language. It's kind of not just my body language in terms of eye contact and posture and things like that, but it's also kind of the emotional vibe that I give off. Guys, have you ever been in a room and you can sort of pick up on that, right? You can pick up on the energy that people have around them. Have you ever been in a room where somebody comes in and they just seem to light that room up? And you can feel that energy. Quick show of hands, has anybody ever been in the presence of somebody who just, when you are with them, they make you feel like there is no one else in the world. They make you feel that present. Anybody feel that before? Flip side of the coin, has anybody else ever, you've been in a room where somebody walks in and suddenly you just feel like all the energy suck out of the room. You feel like, oh my God, I can't breathe. What's going on? It's just, they have such a negative energy, right? That's part of what we're talking about. And that's real and that's palpable. And that's part of communication. At the end of the day, it's only 7% the words. And so people say to me, so why do you care so much about the words? If it's only 7%, if it's 93%, all these other things, well, here's why. Because sales is influence. It's nothing more, it's nothing less. We're trying to influence people when we're in a sales role. Guys, what are we trying to influence people to do in real estate? I want somebody to unmute and talk to me about this. What are we trying to influence people to do? Anybody?
Trust you.
Trust you? Okay, what else? What are we trying to influence them to do?
Trust you, make a deal, refer you.
You know, yeah, a lot. It's all those things, right? A lot of times when I ask that question, what people think is we're trying to influence people to buy a house or to sell a house. And the truth is we're not. We're not trying to. Now, I'll tell you this. Influencing people to buy a house with you pays a hell of a lot more than influencing people to not buy a house with you. Right. So there's a good business reason, but what we're trying to influence people to do is make decisions and get into action. Our job is, how do I build a relationship with you to trust you to make a decision that's in your own best interest? And once you've made that decision, to get into action and do something about it with confidence and self-assurance. Other than those two reasons, guys, there's not a lot of reason for a real estate agent to be in a transaction if it's not guiding people into decision-making and helping to inspire them to take the right actions, right? That's what we need to do. And here's the thing. It's trust, it's decisions, it's actions. We need people to like us enough that they'll listen to us enough that they'll trust us, and trust us enough that they'll do the right thing. And so it all comes down to, how do I do that? And why scripts matter. We're going to remove our limiting beliefs. If you're not sure yet, just stay in curiosity. You don't have to become a script convert today. You don't have to become annoying like I am around scripts, but I just want you to stay in curiosity with me for this hour if you're not sure, okay? Because we have a lot of limiting beliefs. What are our limiting beliefs? Our limiting beliefs are, scripts are going to make me sound forced. They're going to make me sound, they're not going to sound like me. I've read a script. I looked at that script. I read that script. I said, that doesn't sound like me. Newsflash, guys. 90% of the people you're going to talk to don't know what you sound like yet. Yeah, it's just put that in perspective. And the people that do, if you haven't found a way to make that script sound like you, they are going to notice. I remember I was in a class one time when I first came to Keller Williams. It was called BOLD. BOLD is a coaching class that we have. It's BOLD. It stands for Business Objective, Life by Design. That's what this course is about. In the very first session, they gave me a script. And they said, here, I want you to read this script. Call people and your friends, your family. I want you to read this script. It sounded so awkward. It sounded so forced. But I did what I was told. And I made these calls. And you know what happened later on that night? I got a phone call back from one of the guys that I called. And he said, are you okay? He said, I just wanted to hear your voice because earlier in the afternoon, I got a phone call from a guy who said he was you. He sounded like you, sort of. But the words coming out of his mouth sounded so unlike you. I just wanted to make sure that maybe you weren't kidnapped. Maybe you didn't have a gun in your back. Like, that was just so not like, are you okay? That's what he asked me. That's what we're all afraid of. Right? And I don't want that. I don't want you to feel that way. That's a belief that's going to hold you back. Limiting beliefs are nothing more than things that we tell ourselves which hold us back. And the truth is, you know, scripts will actually help you build some confidence. When you know what to say in any given situation, when you know what to say, you're going to be in the position to say the right thing and not get tripped up and not know what's going to happen. They allow you to stay focused on the conversation in the moment. They allow you to do things consistently again and again and again, right? Our limiting beliefs, guys, they're really there to help us. It's not like we have this limiting belief because we're trying to hold ourselves back. We're trying to make ourselves not get into a situation where we do something that makes us look silly and makes us look awkward. That's one of the challenges that we have. Anytime we start something new, human beings are funny little critters. Adults especially, we don't like to put ourselves in situations where we're not right, where we make mistakes, where we say the wrong thing, where we look silly. Right? We want to look good and we want to be right all the time. That's what adults do. Understand that the limiting beliefs are there. They're really to try to help you from putting yourself in an unnatural situation. And yet I'm going to tell you that we're going to have to learn how to do this a little bit. And let me tell you why. Here's what happens with adult learners. I want you to just get into this with me and just stick with me on this. You don't have to become a convert. But this is the way adults learn, and it's different from the way that kids learn. Adults go through these 4 stages. It starts out with this thing called unconscious incompetence. What does that mean? It means I don't even know what I don't know. I don't know everything, but I don't know what I don't know. I'm totally unconscious to the things that I'm incompetent about. And then what happens with adult learners is we get a little bit of learning, we get exposed to something, and suddenly we find ourselves very consciously incompetent. Oh my God, I just realized that 75 hours that they gave me training for to get my real estate license didn't really prepare me for much of anything. I'm suddenly painfully aware that I don't know what I need to know. Now I am consciously incompetent. And for adults, that's terrifying. We don't like that. We like to look good. We like to be right. Kids do not care. Kids don't care. God and God's wisdom decided to not even allow a child's brain to develop to the point where they can have those self-critical thoughts until they're a little bit older, 10, 11, 12. Here's what happens with little kids. They don't care what they don't know. They don't care what they can't do. If I started walking into a kindergarten classroom today and I asked everybody in the class, how many of you kids can draw? Do you know what would happen? What would happen? Every single hand would go up in the air. Am I wrong? And some kid would have 2 hands up in the air and they'd be bouncing around. They'd be squiggling. They're so excited because I can draw, right? What would happen if I open up this class tonight by saying, let me ask you guys a question before we get started. How many of you guys can draw? You know what would have happened? Probably a couple of you, like Glenn, would have raised their hand because you're good at what you do. You can draw. But the rest of us would have heard, how many of you can draw well? And you would have said, you know what? I can draw a stick man. But even the stick man doesn't really look like a man. Sometimes I got to figure, I'm not that good. I can't draw. We filter it through all this judgment about our competence, and it holds us back. What we need to do is understand that as we learn and get a little bit more information, which is why we're here tonight, once you learn a little bit more, you move from that conscious incompetence to conscious competence, which means I can do this task. I can learn what to do, but I got to think about it, right? If you think about driving a car, when you're little, when you're 3, 4, 5, you don't know what you don't know. You're unconsciously incompetent. When you first get your learner's permit and you get behind the wheel for the very first time and you're really out on the road, you're consciously incompetent. You are clearly aware that this could end badly, and so you pay attention to all the steps. You drive the speed limit, you check the mirrors, you make sure that your hands are in the right position, all those things that are so consciously competent. And then at some point, what happens is you've done it so much through repetition that you don't even have to think about it anymore. How many of you, be honest, have ever gotten in the car, driven someplace, and without the involvement of any kinds of substances, you got where you went to, you didn't even remember where the hell you were. You just drove and you got there. Has that ever happened to anybody besides me? And you did not run off the road. You did not run anybody off the road. You stopped at the stop signs. Please tell me you did. Why? You don't have to think about it when you deliver that level of unconscious competence. And with that is where we develop confidence, right? So let me talk about this for a minute and stick with me, guys. We're going to get into scripts in a second. But think about venture capitalists. Anybody ever watched the show Shark Tank? Any Shark Tank fans here? If you ever had an opportunity to interview a legitimate venture capitalist, somebody who was going to fund a big idea, what do they look for? Do you know what they look for? First of all, you have to have a good idea. No venture capitalist is going to fund a bad idea. But a good idea is never enough. What else do they want to see before they pony up any money? What do you think?
Revenue generation.
Revenue generation. What else? If you look at the confidence and presence. If you look at the screen, there's a clue. It's presence. They need to see in your pitch, what's that 55% communication telling me? I heard your words. What am I feeling from you? Do I feel confidence? Do I feel a sense of self-assurance? Do I feel a sense of, you got this? Because if you don't believe in you, I ain't going to believe in you. What people look for is presence. And that is what comes from feeling at your core confident in what you're doing. We develop presence when we're in that space of unconscious competence. And so here's the model. What I want you to follow the sequence. Competence leads to confidence. When we know what to say, we're confident. Confidence leads to comfort and enthusiasm. Comfort and enthusiasm is expressed in being authentic and having a sense of presence. And guys, that's where the connection is made. That's where the sale happens. Do I feel a sense of connection to you? Sales is influence, nothing more, nothing less. We influence people to make a decision and to get into action. They have to like us. They have to trust us. They have to feel our authentic presence. And when they do that, they feel a sense of trust. And when they feel a sense of trust, then we can influence them. Here's the irony of all ironies when it comes to scripts. The truth is that we are afraid to have our conversations become too scripted because we don't want to sound authentic. The truth is also that when we know our scripts well and we don't have to think about the words and we can just be authentic in delivering them ourselves, what the experience is that the other person has is a true sense of authentic connection and presence. Scripted language feels more authentic than unscripted language. That's what the consumer feels if we do it well. If you're doing it badly, if you're just reading it, if you're sounding awkward, if it sounds like a friend has to call you later and say, did you get kidnapped today? Because I was really worried about you for a while. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about knowing what to say in any given situation and being able to respond with confidence without breaking that energy. I want to share with you one more story, then we're going to get into how to learn scripts. I had a friend of mine who actually was an agent that worked for me years ago, and he was a Broadway actor, and a good one, a good actor. As it turned out, his show, Tony-nominated actor, really good actor. He was in real estate because he was staying home raising his two kids while his wife, who had a massive job on Wall Street as a hedge fund manager, was bringing in the money. He was staying at home raising the kids. And we got to talking about the difference between great theater and average theater. And I'm talking about great theater. You ever go to a show and just kind of walk out and feel that you feel moved, right? You can sort of feel yourself feeling different. Has anybody experienced that? In a play, in a show, in music, a concert, where you actually walk out and you feel differently? Quick show of hands. Is that something that you guys have ever experienced? And here's what he said to me. He said, here's how we do that. This is the difference between what we do and what community theater does. We have to learn how to get into the part deeply. He shared with me the hardest role on Broadway is to be the understudy, because sometimes you do not know with more than a half an hour's notice whose role do you need to adapt that night. But we have to know the words so well that we're not thinking about the words anymore. What we're thinking about is the mannerisms. What we're thinking about is how do we connect, not only with each other on the stage, but with the audience. Because when I don't have to think about the words, I can focus on the interaction between the players. And when we do that, that's where we touch people. And if I get too hung up on the words, if I don't know what to say, and here's what happens, we happen time and time again, you're in a home, you think things are going well. I feel really good about this listing. And then they give you that listing objection about maybe your fee. You know what, Laura? I think there's something about your fee that bothers me. You're asking for 6%. I think that's way too low. I want to pay you 10%. No, that's not what they're going to say. Just so that you know, you're not going to get that one. But what's going to happen is they are going to give you an objection. And in that moment, if you don't know what you're going to do, you're going to panic. And in that panic, you're going to pull your energy inward. It's that, oh crap moment that happens when you're like, what am I going to say? I was afraid this was going to happen. The very first time people say, how many homes have you sold? And you go, oh my God, I was afraid of that one. The moment they feel your energy shift, that's where you lost the deal. And they can't quite put their finger on how come. There's just something that doesn't feel right. Only 7% is the words. 38% is how do we deliver those words. 55% is this energy that we give off through our body language and other ways. The moment we break that, that's where we lose the business. And so this is the sequence. When I know what to say in any given situation, I'm never going to get thrown off guard. I'm going to be able to stay in rapport, and I'm going to close more business. I want to introduce you to a guy by the name of Jeff Glover. Jeff Glover is a Keller Williams mega agent out of Detroit, Michigan. And he has a little bit of a 5-minute video or so that talks about scripts. And what I want to do is I just want to have Jeff share in his own words how to use scripts. And so I've set this up. Hopefully you'll be able to hear this well. I've tried to cue this up so that the audio on this video works well on your end of the screen. You might have to turn your volume up, but I want you to take note at some of the things that Jeff is saying, because we're going to talk about it afterwards. I want you to listen in, and anything that he says that sort of gets your attention, I want you to just write that down so we can sort of talk about this afterwards. But I'm going to let Jeff Glover talk a little bit about scripts. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Jeff Glover, and I'm going to tell you the top 5 things that you need to know about using scripts. Step 1, you're going to need to get your scripts from a top agent at the office, your team leader, a MAPS coach, or of course Keller Williams University. Step 2, we're going to need to do a total transformation of, instead of talking and telling, of asking questions. Selling isn't telling, selling is asking a series of questions that leads to desired response. So instead of talking so much, we need to get in the habit of asking questions. And asking questions gives us control of the conversation. Control of the conversation gives us our ultimate outcome, which is an appointment set or closing. Step 3, we need to listen with good intentions. Well, what I mean by that is we need to listen to their answers instead of just listening to them talk and asking another question that comes to mind. For example, instead of asking a seller where they're moving to and then going on to the next question, how soon would you like to be there? Ask them, where are you moving to? And when they give you a response, ask them, what takes you there? Step 4 in becoming better at scripts is we need to learn to mimic, mirror, and match the prospect. What I mean by that is we have to listen to their tone of voice. We have to speed up or slow down based on how fast the prospect is talking. That means when they respond and say, we're moving to Toledo, oh, Toledo, that's exciting. What takes you there? 93% of communication is body language and tonality. And that means only 7% are the words that we say or the questions that we ask. Step 5, we need to take these 5 points and practice them daily. If you think of NFL teams, they practice 50, 60 hours on the practice field for a 1-hour game. Our game is our presentations and our appointments, and we need to practice daily everything that we've learned every single day before we meet with our clients. When it comes to scripts, my biggest aha is that everybody has their own scripts. We're pre-programmed to have scripts, and we're talking and asking questions that are scripted. However, what we found is that most of our own scripts are no good. And so we have to learn the right scripts, the right questions to maintain control of the conversation. Thanks for watching KW Connect. Make it a great day.
All right, there's Mr. Jeff Glover. Guys, what did he say? He touched on a couple different things. He had 5 points. Let's talk about a couple of them. What did he say that got your attention, that you resonated with?
Selling is asking questions.
Selling is not telling. When you're telling, you ain't selling. Just remember that. Selling is guiding people through self-discovery so that they can make the decision that's right for them. It is a self-discovered process. It's not I'm going to tell you, Leslie, what's right for you. I'm going to ask the right questions so that you come to that self-discovery on your own, right? selling is great questions. What else did he say?
You also have to listen.
What?
You have to
No,
listen.
don't fall for that. Yes, you have to listen. But he said you have to listen in a very specific way, didn't he? He said, listen with good intent. What does that mean? What does that mean, somebody?
You're listening to hear what they're saying, not to respond.
Bingo. You're listening not to just respond. We're going to go deeper, right? You know, we sometimes use this phrase of going 3 deep. Or the author Susan Scott in her book Fierce Conversations, which is a wonderful book. If you haven't, you know, I told you, I warned you, I'm going to give you a lot of book references if you hang around in these classes. But Susan Scott talks about mineral rights conversation because he says it's like drilling for oil. You got to go deeper and deeper and deeper until you finally hit the oil, the minerals. What we tend to do is we tend to ask these really shallow, surfacey questions. And you heard in his example, where are you moving to? I'm moving to Toledo. What we tend to ask next a lot of times is, how soon do you need to be in Toledo? I need to be there by September. Terrific. And then we ask another question and another question. And we kind of water ski across the top of our questions here. I know a little bit, but I've never gone deep enough to really understand what the emotion. Remember, logic gets people to think. It's emotion that causes people to act. What is the emotional driver that brings you into the marketplace to buy or sell a primary home, right? And what you're going to ask is more like, where are you moving to? I'm moving to Toledo. That's exciting. What takes you to Toledo? Well, my parents live in Toledo. Awesome. Tell me why it's important for you to be close to your parents right now. Well, because my parents are getting older and I live 1,500 miles away, and I'm at a point in my life where if something happened to them, it's too far for me to get there quickly. I want to be able to be more responsive in an emergency. Now I understand what's driving this move because I've gone deep enough, right? So selling is asking great questions, listening with good intent so that you can go deeper and deeper and really start to find out the motivation behind people's actions and not just the action itself. Does that make sense? Right? Anything else that Jeff said that got your attention?
To mirror or mimic the client's, I guess, tone of voice or their energy, basically matching energies.
Oh my gosh. Have you ever tried to do that for real, Liz? In
Yeah.
real life?
Yeah. Do it all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. And how does it go?
I mean, I think it makes people more comfortable. If it makes you seem like, oh, we're on the same page, we're vibing with each other, everything's going well, so they calm down a bit and then the conversation flows easier.
Guys, it is exactly it, right? That's exactly it. And it's that 55% communication again. Mm-hmm. Right? Here's the thing about human beings, guys. I just want to give you a little bit of biology. This is rooted in biology, not psychology. This is the way your brain is programmed. Here's what happens. Your brain's primary job is to do what? It's to keep you alive. It's to not let you get into a dangerous situation where you're going to do something to get hurt or killed and you can't pass your genes on to the next generation. As crass as that sounds, that's your brain's primary function. And we're constantly evaluating our environment to determine, is this safe or is this not safe? And the moment something startles us and scares us, the fight or flight response kicks in, and I either have to run or I have to stick around and fight, right? We know that this is just reflexive, the way our brains are wired, even though millions of years of evolution has not changed that very much. And here's what happens. Human beings are also tribal creatures. What we believe is that people that are part of my tribe are inherently safer than people that are not part of my tribe. And we see how crazy that can get taken to its extreme when we think about how tribal we've become in society today, but that's a conversation for another day. People who seem like us are inherently felt to be safer than people who seem different than us. That's the basis of just human bias. And here's the thing, guys. At a quick and primal level, people that sound like us must be part of our tribe. There's a reason why throughout evolution, people in different countries have developed different languages. It's a way to kind of tip people off that you ain't from around here. And I don't know if you're safe or not, so I need to pay attention. If you have a big geographic area like the United States, We develop regional dialects. There's a reason why people in Boston use the same English words and sound so different from the people in Austin, Texas. It's a regional dialect that says, you're not from around here. I need to pay attention. Are you safe? Are you not safe? And when we know that that's the way that the brain is hardwired, this is human behavior. As long as you're looking to be in real estate sales and selling to human beings, you're going to have to know this. If you want to sell to cats and dogs, there's another class for that. But if you're going to deal with human beings, this is how they're wired. And so when we can leverage that, when you speed up, I speed up. When you slow down, I slow down. What begins to happen is we begin to develop this sense of, you sound like me. I can relax a little bit. We're vibing, right? My daughter would be thrilled to hear me say that. I'm going to tell her later. I'm going to text her and say, you know what? I used the phrase vibing in a class today. She's going to be, get out. But guys, that's what we're trying to do. Why? Because influence requires people to like us and trust us. And I can't like you and trust you if I don't know if you're safe yet. So we need to do all these different things. Look, 7% is the words. It's not all about the words. He did say you got to know where to get good scripts. Do you know where you would find scripts? Anybody know where they could go get some scripts? Because if you don't, I'm going to take a minute and share my Zoom screen and show you on KW website.
University.
KW University, he mentioned, is there anybody here, and I'm willing to stop for a minute, does anybody here not know where to find the scripts on Keller Williams University? Because if you don't, raise your hand. I want to show you. Okay. Glenn, I'm going to show you because you were brave enough to raise your hand. Here's what I'm going to do. Let me open up my screen for a second. I'm going to stop this screen share. And as soon as my screen loads, I'm going to share another one. Okay. Do you see my Keller Williams internet site page? Do you see it? Okay, great. Here at the very top, you see where it says education? On this education tab, I just want you to click here. And it's going to take you to a part of the intranet site that we call Keller Williams University. And there's lots of different places that you can find scripts here. One place would be this little place that says Ignite 2.0. This is the Ignite class that you see me sending emails to our day folks during the day who are able to kind of do that 9 to 12 commitment. This is the course materials for that. You can have them. Just click on here and you're going to find all the different resources. This is the participants resources. This is the facilitators resource. You click on the participant resources tab. All the handouts for that class are right here. You can have them, even though you might not be able to make that time commitment in the morning. You can have the material for free, but right here where it says toolkit, right here, if you click on that and download that, there's 2 script books right in there. And I'd encourage you to go download those. Now, I'm going to warn you, this website did get a little bit wonky of late. And so it does sort of say you have to be on a browser other than Chrome. If you're on Chrome, which I am right now, you can download all this stuff right here, all the handouts, all the class materials. But when you try to download the toolkit, it's not going to work. You're going to have to switch to Firefox or Internet Explorer or something else, and you'll be able to download that. But there's script books in there, right? Where else could you go? Well, you could go back a little bit, and let me just go back a page. Stick with me. I got too many screens open up on my side here. If I go back, do you see me getting back to the Keller Williams University? Right here where it says instructor-led courses and materials. You can click right on this box with this whole group of people here. And all of these boxes represent a different class that we teach or resource material for you. And you're just going to go right down here to where it says KWU, Keller Williams University, script catalog number 1, working with buyers, script catalog number 2, working with sellers, script catalog number 3, handling lead generation. About 700 or 800 pages worth of scripts there for you to download for free. Take advantage of those, guys. I want you to kind of get some good scripts, because what you heard Jeff Glover say is that all of us have our scripts. It's just that some of our scripts are really good and some of our scripts are not so good. And one of the challenges sometimes that happens, guys, is when we just kind of wing it, when we just kind of have our own conversations, we can get ourselves into a pickle by saying things that maybe I shouldn't say. And here's what I mean by that. It's only 7% is the words. Do you see are we back on the 7% screen? All right. I want to make sure all my screen shares and stop shares are working. Here's the thing. Anybody ever serve in the Marines? Any military folk here? Frank, I want to thank you for your service first and foremost, but I want to tell you something. Basic training is a pain in the butt. Would you agree? You get a guy like this in your face all the time. This is the drill sergeant. And what the drill sergeant does, let me ask you, Frank, is the drill sergeant polite about what he asks, or does he just tell you what to do?
No, drill instructors are not polite.
They're not polite, right? They're telling you what to do. And one of the things that we understand about language is that the brain responds in certain ways with certain kinds of language. And command language is just one of the things that your brain is hardwired to respond to. A command is an instruction to do something. And coming out of a guy that looks like this, it's not usually polite. It's usually pretty intense. It's usually in your face. But the language of commands is just an instruction to do something. And you can't not do it. How many of you have ever had commands that you've used in your own life, maybe some scripts that you use at home? Anybody have kids? Do we have any command language that we use with better or worse success with our kids? Anybody can unmute and tell me some commands that we tried to get our kids to do? Go to bed, empty the dishwasher. Anybody else?
Clean your room.
Clean your room, right? Anytime that you can give a statement that you could imagine coming out of the mouth of a drill sergeant as a command, that's command language, and your brain can't not do it. And so we learn how to leverage that. And let me give you an example of the fact that your brain can't not do it. I'm going to ask you guys to just listen carefully for me for 5 seconds. All right? In the next 5 seconds, I do not want any of you, nobody, under no conditions, no one can do this, all right? Do not think of a dog. Why are you smiling, Lauren? Did you think of a dog? You did. Did anybody else think of a dog? Did a little picture or an image of a dog pop? I told you not to. I begged you not to. And once you heard that command, you couldn't stop yourself because your brain heard, think of a dog, and an image of a dog showed up. That's what we call command language. And when we learn how to leverage that, when we learn how to build scripts with the right kinds of commands that help people to think more clearly, to make decisions and take action, we're going to have more success in sales. That's just one example. And people push back sometimes and say, I don't like that. That just sounds so manipulative. That sounds like, I don't know, like I'm using some secret tool here to cause people to do something that they don't want to do. Here's the truth, guys. These are powerful tools, but you have a license. And what I tell people all the time is the salesman and the con man have the exact same tools in their toolkit. The only difference is, are you using it for someone else's benefit or your own? Because the con man has mastered language and neurolinguistics to get people to feel trusting of them, to feel safe with them, to do something that's not in their best interest, but in the con man's best interest. That's not what we do. But if we want to help people find a way to get their own goals met, their own needs met, we have to allow them to be influenced by us. And this is just one example of command language. And guys, we can screw it up if we're not careful. If we just kind of wing it in these conversations, we can really jam it up and confuse people. Let me give you an example that's very poignant right now. The spring market is here. The spring market is hot. And yet there are still people out there who say, you know what? I just think I want to wait a couple more months. If I put my house in the market in May, here's what's going to happen. The flowers are going to be out. Everything's going to look better. My house just shows so much better when I have daffodils in the front yard that aren't quite there yet. I think I want to wait. And here's what happens. If you wait until everybody else puts their house on the market, does that make for more competition or less competition?
Or
Yeah, it's more competition that you're competing against for the same buyer pool. So we want to get people on the market now. And so if we're not careful, we could have a conversation with a potential seller that might sound something like this. You know what, Debbie? This is such an important time right now to be on the market. Look, if you keep your house off the market, you're going to miss the best market of the year. Now is the time. Is that good advice? Yeah, it's really good advice. I don't want you to wait. I want you to take advantage of the opportunity now. The demand is here now. I don't want you to wait until you're competing against everybody else. We gave them good advice, but we wrapped it up in some really crappy sentences. Because what did I tell them? I said to Debbie specifically, this is important. If you keep your house off the market, there's the drill sergeant. What did he just tell you to do?
Keep your house off the market.
Is that what I wanted you to do? No, it's not, but it is what I told you to do. If you keep your house off the market, Debbie, you're going to, drill sergeant shows up again, miss the best market of the year. Is that what I want you to do? No, but it's what I did tell you to do. And so if you really want to screw up their head, you're going to say, look, if you keep your house off the market, you're going to miss the best market of the year. So you should really list your home tonight. And unconsciously, in that 55% of communication, they're saying, dude, you're confusing me. I don't know what you want. You're telling me to keep my house off the market, list with you tonight, take advantage of the best market of the year, miss the best market of the year. I am really confused. And then what happens is they can't put their finger on it, but they don't feel safe. And they don't feel like they can move forward. And you get these feedback like, we just need to sleep on it. It's a really important decision. We just need to talk about it. That's always code for there's something that's causing you to not feel safe enough to move forward with me right now. And we created that when we freelance, when we free fall with our scripts, when we don't know how to say what we need to say. And so learning scripts and learning how to say them in a way that sounds natural is really important. 38% is the tone of voice and the delivery. Guys, there's 3 key voices that you're going to have to learn how to manage and really master. Christopher Voss, one of my favorite negotiation trainers in the world, former FBI international lead hostage negotiator for the FBI for over a decade, now owns a Black Swan consulting firm. He says, look, here's the 3 voices that you're going to have to master to be a strong negotiator. And I'm going to just say communicator. Number 1 is your normal speaking voice with animation, just your normal voice. How do I use that? Speed it up, slow it down, louder and softer so that I can mirror and match and create that sense of connection. Sometimes when you've got difficult information to share, or you're going to say something that you anticipate is going to cause the other person to react with anger, sometimes we have to tone it down and step into what Chris calls the late night radio DJ talk show voice. You know that voice, Elvira, in the evening. Sometimes we got to lean into that voice and really say it softer and really say it more gentle. And sometimes with very judicious use, we're going to have to step into a strong and more assertive voice because we've got to take control of the situation. Has anybody as a parent ever leaned into that voice? Right? We all do. And we have to learn, how do we do this effectively? How do I know what words to say? How do I mirror and match? How do I learn how to use this instrument? The only tool I've got to influence you with is the words and my delivery. That's it. And so how we deliver those words is going to create the emotional sense of what you're feeling inside. And how you feel emotionally is going to filter what you hear. I'm going to give you a sentence. I never said he stole the money. Now just stick with me for a second and listen to how I say this. I never said he stole the money. 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 You know, I never said he stole the money. I never said he stole the money. 7 words, 7 different meanings, all through the inflection of my voice. And we have to learn how to do it well if we want to have success. Stay in curiosity. You don't have to make a decision. You don't have to believe this. You don't have to believe in gravity either. But I would defy you to be very careful as you step off of a curb if you don't believe in gravity, right? So here's the thing. How do we learn scripts? In the last few minutes, guys, we will go about 5 minutes over or 10 minutes over. If you have to leave, you're not going to hurt my feelings, but I want you to learn. How do we learn scripts? How do we memorize them? In a way that we can really make them sound like us so that we can stay in character. And the good news is for us, it's my own character. I don't have to learn like a Broadway actor to be someone else. I just have to learn how to be inside my own skin and say these words. And so I thought we'd learn from a guy that some of you may know. Anybody recognize this guy? This is Jim Parsons, right? Dr. Sheldon Cooper, right? Any fans here? Big Bang Theory fans? All right. Here's this really cool thing about Jim is he plays this nerdy, geeky, scientific guy. And some of the language that he learns is really scientific. And here's the thing. He ain't a scientist. Jim is an actor from Texas. And one of the things he has to learn is he has to learn an entirely different set of words that he's never heard before and deliver them authentically. And I want you to hear how he learns how to do this. And we're going to deconstruct what he does for a minute. How do you learn scripts? Let's listen from Jim.
Okay. What's your process? This is a good question for Jim Parsons. What's your process for preparing for each episode? How do you memorize the special Sheldon monologues or complicated science terminology that you have to have?
During the week, I start, I probably have them on me. I do. I make
The
my
magic note
flashcards.
cards.
And like this is Act 1, Scene A. And then there's my first cue line. It's from Leonard. There's the L. It says, okay, see you later. And then on the back is my line. And I pace around my house and I do drill them like some sort of ballet dancer learning moves. Largely because I don't understand a lot of what I'm talking about. And so I need the muscle memory to be in my mouth, at least to be really ready to go, because if I do think about it, A, the right words will never occur to me, and B, the ones that do will just be wrong.
I don't want to be joined to another object by an inclined plane wrapped helically around an axis.
In what way are you screwed?
Mayim, what's your process for preparing?
We'll stop that video there. You get the gist, right? Now, Jim touched on a couple really important things in terms of how to learn scripts. What did he tell you that he does as part of his process? What does he do? Someone unmute.
He puts them on note cards.
Note cards. Let's start with that for a second. Did he create the script? No. A writer wrote the script and gave it to him. It was already written down. Why did he take the time to write it again in his own hand? Because that's how you burn it into your brain. You could read the script 1,000 times. You won't learn it as fast as if you read it and wrote it. Writing it burns it in deeper. That's really important. Take the script and rewrite it. What else does he do? What else does he do?
He paces around.
And whether you choose to pace around or whether that creates too much of a physical distraction, I don't know if you want to pace around. That's up to you. But he does practice those scripts standing up and not sitting down. Guys, your energy is totally different when you're standing up than when you're sitting down. And he rehearses them again and again and again, and he drills them again and again and again, so that he talks about getting those words into his mouth. Because these are long syllables, complicated scientific words. And even though he thinks he knows them, if he doesn't practice them and get those words in his mouth, when he opens up his mouth, it's going to come out wrong. And I can promise you guys, because I've done it. I've read the script. I've read it. I think I got it. The guy picks up the phone and I try to say it and it comes out with blah, blah, blah. I just stumble on my words because I haven't said them. So practice it out loud, right? And maybe you have to go into a quiet place by yourself. Maybe you practice it in your car, right? Maybe you do it whatever way you want to do it, but practice those scripts again and again and again until you understand them, until they become natural, until you can deliver them in character, which is your own character. I know those words don't sound like me. Newsflash, people don't know what you sound like, but they will sound like you if you deliver them like you. And so the last thing he says is, I got to practice. The thing that you heard Jeff Glover say is, we got to practice. How often? Again and again and again. An NFL team practices 50, 60 hours for a 1 hour game. How often do we have to practice our scripts? Well, it depends. Do we want to have success or do we not? Because our game is our appointments. Our game is our listing appointments. Guys, it is so hard to get there with all the lead generation that we have to do, and to finally get to the listing presentation, to trip over our words and cause people to say, there's something I can't put my finger on. It just doesn't feel right. We can't shoot ourselves in the foot like that. We've got to practice for our games. I heard an interview one time. I was a music major in college for a while, till I realized I didn't have the talent or the patience to feed my family. So I switched over to psychology, and my father said, oh, that was good thinking, you dummy. That was good thinking. But here's the deal. When I was in the Montclair State, in the performing arts department, I heard an interview with a violinist, a guy by the name of Itzhak Perlman. Some of you may have heard his name. One of the greatest violinists of our time. And what he says is practice. If I don't practice every single day, I can hear it in my performance. If I don't practice 2 days in a row, the music critics can hear it in my performance. And if I don't practice 3 days in a row, the audience can hear it in my performance. When you're elite, we practice all the time. And we don't practice just to the point where we get it right. We practice to the point where there's no chance that we can get it wrong. That's the difference between amateurs and professionals. Amateurs practice until they do it right. Professionals practice until they can't get it wrong. And it's time on task through repetition. Jim gives you some great tips here on how to learn.
Okay.
What I'd encourage you to do is get a script partner, get a buddy. Maybe it's somebody that you have on the screen here. One of the challenges in real estate is we're independent contractors. And if we're not going into the offices, which quite honestly, in a pandemic, nobody is. But guys, has anybody on this call ever felt a sense of isolation when you're trying to do this on your own as a dual career person and you feel like you're all by yourself? Get a buddy. Take a look around. This is the Brady Bunch on speed right now. Find a friend. Look at a name. Get a script partner. And here's how we learn scripts. We practice it one line at a time, right? You saw the note cards. We practice one line at a time. He had his entrance cue, and then he practiced the script. And anybody who's ever done theater or learned music or learned a dance routine, you don't learn the whole thing in one shot. You learn the first part of it, you practice that up, then you learn the second part of it, and then you marry those two together and practice them together, and then you learn the third part. That's how we learn scripts, right? Practice again and again and again. It pays to have a partner to practice with. And when you're learning, it also pays to record yourself. Record yourself. Listen to yourself. How does it sound? Am I getting better? For those folks who are in Ignite during the daytime, we do script practice. We go into little Zoom breakout rooms and we practice scripts together. And you know what happens? The first couple times where we read the script for the first time, it doesn't sound good. I use the analogy. It's like the fourth grade band concert. Y'all been there as a parent? You're like, oh my God, my kid's been playing the clarinet now for 5 weeks. Let's time the band concert. Oh my God, that sounds awful. But they're playing the notes right. You smile, you do your diligence as a good dad and a good mom to endure. And then what happens though, it's kind of cool. Because by fourth grade, they keep practicing. By the time they get to eighth grade, they're pretty damn good. And by the time they get to high school, they're freaking crazy good. You ever seen some of these high school ensembles? It's like, oh my God. It's just time on task. The only way we're going to get better is we have a partner and we practice again and again and again. So I said we're going to go 5 minutes over, and we're going 5 minutes over. I'm not giving you scripts today. I'm just going to really try to strive why these are so important. Because you can surrender to it or not. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to become an annoying convert like me if you don't want to. But I'm here to tell you, I'm going to try to shorten the curve for you guys to make some real money in this business. And what I can tell you is the agents that just surrender to the fact that because we're working with human beings and human brains process language in very specific ways, Learning how to work in alignment with that, learning how to leverage that, learning how to say what words, how to deliver them well is going to cause you to have more success. And I want you to be successful. So we're going to park the bus here, but give me some ahas, any takeaways. I'm always going to ask to close out by clearing the room. What did you hear tonight that's causing you maybe to think differently or maybe do something a little differently? Any ahas, any takeaways from any part of tonight's session? One or two, and I'll call. I'm not afraid to call people. Go ahead, Christopher.
I was just gonna say, when you were talking about the, going from getting to the point of unconscious competence and going through that, process, that's definitely, something that I kind of understand is going on, like trying to make that transition where you have that confidence in, what you're doing and everything. So,
and Chris, the thing I want to drive home on that is I want you to know the words so that you can become unconsciously competent, but it's not so that you've memorized the words.
Right.
It's so that when you don't have to worry about what's going to happen, because believe me, guys, on a great Broadway show, let me go back to my friend, the actor, for a minute. Every once in a while, somebody on stage flakes out a little bit and steps out of character. And it doesn't happen much at a professional level, but one of the things that happens is when you don't have to worry about the words, you can focus on the connection. And it's the connection where the sale happens, guys. It's not in what did I say? It's not in how cool is my listing presentation. You can't create a listing presentation that's cool enough to beat another agent. It's how are you going to deliver it, right? It's how are you going to deliver it? So that sense of unconscious competence, we need to get there so that you can feel that sense of, I got this. I'm going to go into this and I got this. Yeah, anybody ever felt in the zone? Right? We talk about that in peak performance, being in the zone. It's like Derek Jeter says, time slows down. It's like the baseball seemed like it was the size of a beach ball. There's no way I couldn't hit it because I was so in the zone. That's what I want you to experience when you're going into these appointments, because there's nothing that can be said that you don't have a prepared response for. Give me another takeaway. Another aha, one more.
Practice makes perfect.
You know what? Practice doesn't make perfect.
Makes permanent.
Perfect practice makes perfect. Let me unpack that for a second. Repetition of the wrong thing is going to get you in the wrong place. Perfect practice makes perfect. Perfect practice means practicing in a practice environment with somebody who can observe and guide you. And that's why we sometimes record ourselves, to send that recording to a coach or send it to me so I can give you some feedback. Perfect practice is stepping outside of your comfort zone with somebody who can correct you so you can get you back on track, so you do the right things consistently again and again and again. Now you're onto something. But repetition is going to reinforce. It's just, is it going to be reinforcing the right stuff or the wrong stuff? Right? All right, guys. Anything else before we call it a wrap for tonight?
I have a question.
Go ahead. Bring it on. I'm not afraid.
I know you mentioned that there's like 2 books of scripts.
There's actually 3 in the Ignite Toolkit. There's 2. Yep.
So I'm just wondering, for a newer agent, which ones would you suggest we prioritize?
Great question. Thank you for asking that, Debbie. I would bring you right to the Ignite Toolkit, because the Ignite Toolkit is the foundational training. And in those, there's 2 books. One of them we call Scripts, one we call Sparks, and the second one we call Elements. And here's the thing, the whole image of Ignite, which is our foundational training, is built on this idea of building a fire. And to build a fire, you need an element to burn and a spark to ignite it. Right? There's the imagery. The first part of that course is called Sparks. It's the scripts that are about how do we get your business started? How do you tell people that you're in real estate? How to remind them again and again and again, right? The second half are the scripts that are for how do you run your business? What do I say at an open house? How do I ask people for a price reduction? Those kinds of things. I would start there. I think that that'll be a good place to start from.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, guys, if there's no other questions, and if there are, I'm willing to stay. But if there are none other questions, tomorrow, Patty's going to be back. And we're going to get into some computer stuff. We're going to get into the New Jersey MLS proficiency. And what do you need to know and how do you need to make it work? Unless you're in and out of the tools, just like anything else. When you use the tools repeatedly, you get really good at them. When you don't use the tools so much, not so much. I have only been a member myself of the New Jersey MLS for about 2 months. I have belonged to virtually every multiple listing service in New Jersey as an agent, as I've managed and done business all around the state. But I just got into the New Jersey MLS, and it's different. All of these MLSs have some different peculiarities. So Patty, who is a pro, is going to come back tomorrow. She's going to teach you the proficiency of the New Jersey MLS. What do you need to know? Tips and tricks. She's going to be doing that tomorrow, and I hope you can come back. I intend to be here and join her because I want to learn from her all the things that I don't know. So we'll do that tomorrow, and then we'll be back next week with some more good stuff. All right, guys?
Thank you, Al.
All right, guys. Have yourself a great night. We look forward to talking to you soon.
Thanks,
Tomorrow.
Be well.
Thank you.